Now this is Macey Dean's Battleship. This is what I am going to bring in the battle against my Assault Frigate. Because I think my Assault Frigate has the power to evenly match this thing that Macey Dean created. Which this is a very nice ship. It's very well created. My Assault Frigate is a little bit more messy, but my Assault Frigate is a brute. Now just to compare sizes here, I'll load the Assault Frigate. And, I mean, it makes Macey Dean's ship look pretty small. But does it have the capacity to actually take out an experienced person that made a warship, as to my first time pretty gigantic warship? I've made some smaller ones before, but this is the first real thing I've created that is gigantic and can probably do a decent amount of damage. So if you have not seen the video about this Assault Frigate already, that is previous to this, there's a link in the video down below that is just about this Assault Frigate and how I got it into space through cheats, because this thing is a little too big just to simply get into space. I mean, I think I could probably get this thing into space now because of those larger tanks and larger engines, and I could set up something to get it into a very small orbit, and then with its engines get into a higher orbit. So we start out with Macey Dean's ship, and I'm like, this is a beauty. And we launch the thing very, very slow to actually get any speed. I mean, I think I could get something better than this, and yeah, it didn't last too long. At first I was like, well, this probably isn't going to work. There's probably some sort of version or some sort of incompatibility with this because it was made an older version. And I'm going to have to fix it up a bit. But no, eventually I got this thing to fly through a couple of tries. And once I get this thing into space, I put it at too high of an orbit that I used most of the power of the main engines to get myself up into a higher orbit, and my logic was then I'd have more time to thrust, and I don't need as much delta V to be in an orbit at this level, but I don't know what I was thinking, because I really didn't get too far. I got the RCS and the engines going, and that basically just fell and crashed into Kerbal. So here I try again. I'm much better, and there's actually a time I try in between this where I fail again. This third time, I am successful. Third as in I actually got it off the docking ports without any explosions. I don't even know how many times I had to get it off the docking ports without explosions. For some reason, they just want to explode, man. So I finally get this thing out into orbit, and it's looking pretty cool. It's fully functional. As far as I know, everything's working properly. I don't have any weird things getting in my way. Its orbit's a little bit crooked, but I fix it within some burns. It's got a fairly nice amount of engines and fuel for getting around fairly easily. I put it in an orbit relatively close to the Assault Frigate's orbit, and I think I have to do a bunch of orbits here because it's like on the opposite side of Kerbal. So I went through some wacky orbits there until they got closer together. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to have the Assault Frigate be the attacker. It's going to have the first shot, but it's only going to have one shot. Then, whether it hits or not, the Macey Dean's battle cruiser will shoot back with 2 of its homing missiles. And then the Assault Frigate will get 2 more shots. And then I'll decide what happens from there, because at that point I would figure out something had happened and something would have hit the other ship. So here I am lining it up, looking as good as ever. Looks exactly like how it was in almost called it the movies, Macey Dean series. So here we are. I have lined it up. I'm pretty close to the Assault Frigate, and I'm noticing I don't see it anywhere in space. Maybe I'm just not looking in the right area. For some reason, just the thing that shows that it is nearby in space and gives you its momentum or distance from you was not showing up anywhere as far as I know. So I decided to get the Assault Frigate to do the rest of the work on canceling out the speed between their orbits because it has a lot more engines, and I think it actually can go a little bit faster than Macey Dean's ship, even though it's this full of fuel. But its maneuverability is pretty terrible. So I've got their orbits pretty close, and at this point I'm like, I don't see this thing. There's something wrong. There must be some sort of glitch, or I've got something turned off that I don't know what it is. I'm hitting a bunch of keys. I went through some settings. I couldn't find anything. At this point, it might have been a glitch. This was recorded in 0.26. So it might have been a glitch and just fixed in 0.90. I've not played 0.90 too much yet, but it looks pretty amazing, and I've built something small. Well, not something small. I've built something that I'm definitely going to post here soon. So after a little while, we're on the dark side of the planet, and I can see the light of Macey Dean's cruiser. And I was like, oh, there it is, and I'm actually pretty close to it. I mean, I kept lining it up to get closer and closer, and I was like, at some point I ought to see the cruiser, the battleship. There she is in the distance. So I get ready and try to get this as lined up as possible for my first strike on his ship. So here goes the bullet, and it looks like it's actually going to get pretty close, but it dips away a little bit. I would consider that a pretty good shot, but nothing hit. So I get Macey Dean's cruiser flipped around, and it's on its side, but it doesn't really matter. I'm going to use its homing missiles, and I'm all eager to see how much damage he can do against my assault frigate, because I think my assault frigate's pretty heavily armored. I launch it immediately, and I'm sitting there for a second, and it looks like I'm just sitting there waiting for it to go, but I'm pressing keys, and nothing's happening. And I'm like, what else can go wrong now? I can't see it on the radar. I can only set target when I'm zoomed out with the map. I've blown up Macey Dean's ship multiple times. And I figure out that the electricity on this thing is completely bare, and for some reason, whatever is on those clampotrons, Macey Dean's ship completely drained. So I take a little while to find a source of electricity that I can see at the same time. I know there's a bunch of batteries on the side of the ship, but for some reason it was really hard for me to try to access one of them, or access both of them at the same time to transfer energy. I don't remember which one. It was a little while ago. So I finally have the energy in the homing missile, and I launch it, and I have control of it. And I set my target to the assault frigate, because as I said, I can't see it on the radar, so I have to do it on the map. And I'm pressing buttons and nothing is happening, even though I have control over this thing. And that's when I realize there's no monopropellant in this either. And at this point I'm like, come on, 2 assault frigates first shot is a dud, these 2 are duds. So I'm going to give the assault frigate 2 more shots. If it hits it with its first one, I'm going to give Macey Dean another try with his homing missiles, because both of those being duds, and that wouldn't be Macey Dean. So I give the assault frigate another try. Its first one misses again, not by much. Its second one misses a bit farther. And I was like, man, 2 more misses. This has been so anticlimactic. I have them both here. I've put so much time into this, trying to get this to work, and no success. So at this point, I was like, you know what? I think it's been enough time that Macey Dean's ship has had enough to power up its primary weapons. So I line up to launch its 2 primary missiles in the front. I know it has multiple of them, but I'm not going to launch them all at once. I'm only going to allow 2 of those missiles. If they miss, then I'll be more homing missiles, and the assault frigate gets more shots before he fires 2 of the large missiles again. So I've got it all lined up, and let me tell you, I am used to my assault frigate's way of firing, which is through stages. Because there's so many bullets, I can't do it through key commands. So I'm used to pressing spacebar to fire. So what do I use to fire with Macey Dean's ship? Spacebar. What are you supposed to do? Use a key command. And I was just kind of silent and stunned as I saw both of the ships completely destroyed themselves. At least I got a good shot. I mean, that thing could have not been more accurate. That hit the assault frigate dead center. But holy moly, I'm trying to look at the Assault Frigate and see what's happening to it, if it actually absorbed the blow or not, because that's some serious momentum coming at it. There's so much stuff that I'm panning through, and if finally I get a glimpse of the Assault Frigate, and it does not look too good. Stuff is flying all around it in space. Macey Dean's ship is destroyed. I'm not looking at that. I just want to see what the state of the Assault Frigate is in. The command module with the Kerbal in it was completely, I guess I'd call it decapacitated. But I still seem to have control of the ship, because you see those monopropellant, or fuel propellant things in the back is still working, so it's still trying to align itself to something. And that's when I realized the probe on the front is still functioning. So even though this thing, just to show what I could do with this Assault Frigate, even though it lost its command pod, it still has probes attached to it that I'm able to control it with. And if this happened in a real battle and the other enemy is still standing, I could use this thing to fool out, just destroy by ramming. And this thing would have so much momentum behind it, even at lower speeds. You could not stop this thing. So I decided to launch the probe and check out the wreckage of Macey Dean's. And from this view, it looked like most of it had disappeared, and I assume because the command pod for Macey Dean, where all the Kerbals were in, probably got destroyed in the explosion. And the game might have picked that all up as debris and cleaned it up, but I pan around and I find Macey Dean's ship, and what do you know? Both the command pod for the Assault Frigate has the Kerbal still alive in it, and the Macey Dean ship still has the Kerbals alive in it too. So no Kerbals were harmed in this process. But holy fails, just nothing good. And once we got a lot of explosions, which was kind of cool to see, it pretty much destroyed a bunch of hours of work I put into this. So this was kind of upsetting, but at least I got some serious explosion footage. And yeah, I'll just pan through the destruction of everything. This almost reminds me of the game Homeworld with all the pieces of scrap metal everywhere, where you're in like one of the ship graveyards, creepy places. But yeah, I think I will try to do this again. I might even try to get the Assault Frigate into space in a realistic manner with just a bunch of big bad engines. But until then, hopefully I don't fail again, and I'll be a little more prepared next time, because I was so antsy to do this, and it resulted in haste makes waste. Stay tuned for more KSP.